Yes, so I touched very briefly on that. My thinking on the global carbon price is from economic principles point of view, because the externality that emissions produce is a global externality. It doesn't matter where it is produced, and because the goal is to internalize the externality, you want a global, uniform price that reflects the shadow cost of the externality. So the economic principle there, I think, is clear. We also heard this morning from the keynote that focusing on a uniform carbon price, and an agreement on that might actually be easier. That's also another strong argument in favor. The big caveat, however, it seems to me, is that the notion of a carbon price in practice is an abstraction, because there's no one there measuring emissions and then deciding on, and here's how much you have to pay because you've emitted so much. It's not like with water. If you have a water tax, you know, how much water you use is a meter. It doesn't work like that with carbon emissions. Carbon emissions are imperfectly measured at the original source, and so they often get taxed indirectly. So you have, for example, gasoline taxes. That's a carbon tax, but it's not, with a different name. And then when you go to that level of detail, which activities get taxed by how much, it gets too complicated to then bring back to this idea of a simple, uniform, global carbon tax. Yes, that's a very hard question, because a major part of that question relates to tipping points. As a number of people have alluded to this morning, what's the point of no return when we have pumped so much CO2 in the atmosphere that we'll lose control of climate dynamics? It becomes irreversible. The climate damage becomes irreversible. There's a lot of science suggests that such a tipping point exists, but where it is exactly is not perfectly known, and that's a major reason why the economic risks linked to climate risk are not well understood, because they depend so much on what you think about what the tipping point is, where it is, and how it should be addressed. So what the market can tell us is the compensation for risk that if you want, society requires for bearing that risk. And that's a very helpful piece of data that we can get from the market. And there are now a number of studies that are identifying the risk premium and how the risk premium, how does it apply to climate risk, and how do you separate out climate risk from other risks? That's a very interesting area of research.